catch myself thinking over the what ifs. What if we hadn't found an affirming and experienced therapist? What if I'd listened to my mother, a woman from a very traditional community, and tried to exert my will to change Jacob's identity? What if a friend had referred us to a specialist with a reputation for helping kids get over their gender confusion and make peace with their sex assigned at birth? You have heard enough today to realize the dangers to be avoided. Despite the progress that has been made and all that is known about the necessity of affirming our children, parents like us are still quite vulnerable at the start of this journey. It is the very nature of parenting a child who requires of us to let go of preconceived ideas of who they are and who they will be, both in our families and in society at large. Unfortunately, even as more therapists make efforts to learn and engage our LGBTQ youth in positive ways, there are others who peddle cures for what they see as a way of life incompatible with their beliefs. In my capacity as an advocate, I have heard from parents who were directed by a friend or minister to utilize these peddlers of conversion therapies. What their children experienced was shame and rejection, which frequently led to self-harm. I am thinking of one mother in particular who for a period sat on the same parents' council as me at the Human Rights Campaign. She became an advocate, as she tells it, because she will never have the chance to do things over for her son, who tragically took his life. But she can make sure other parents know the devastating consequences of the choices they make. Being the parent of a transgender child has been one of the greatest blessings of my life. But I would be amiss if I said it has always been an easy or obvious road. Parents should not be ensnared with false and harmful therapies in their most desperate time of need. The medical community has reached a consensus on the standard of care for LGBTQ youth, and it is affirming. The time is now to legally protect our children from harmful practices that strip them of their dignity and inflict irreparable damage. It is with hope and gratitude that I ask for your resounding and unequivocal support of H140. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony and sharing this story. Are there any questions? Thank you again.
I wanted to point one more thing out, if I may, and this is along the lines of what Rep. Lewis said. There is no abuse in my home. Nobody has been sexually abused, emotionally abused. Nobody has seen inappropriate genitalia at wrong times. I am the best parent I can be, as so are the other parents that I know who have a transgender child. Let's not continue to spread this falsehood. Thank you.
So we have Louis, Ruiz, and Angel Colon.
Hello everyone, my name is Luis and I am a Orlando Post survivor, and I just want to ask forgiveness if I'm not from Maine, if that makes me a little discreditable, but I know that we are all tied to a national event, which is Post nightclub. We've lost a lot of people. I for one was never abused, touched, or molested. I didn't choose what came my way, but I did choose to how to respond to it. I went to go seek help in counseling at a young age, and we're part of a ministry called Fearless Identity that go around the nation and the world, and we allow people to know that change is possible if you want it. We're not putting a gun to no one's head and telling them, hey, you have to change. We're against electric therapy as well, so we are with you when it comes to that. I'm sorry that that happened to a lot of people. I am, and we're with you in this fight to stop it. But at the same time, this will stop young children, middle school. We go to middle schools and high schools where there is people that want change. And we're not telling them they have to. They're saying, hey, I'm afraid that the LGBTQ and other people are going to attack me or also bully me because I want to see change. And I think that's sad. I think we also, like some of the people said, we want the choice. We want to give our kids the choice to be able to select what they want. And we're not shutting nobody down, just like someone asked me the other day, hey, are you going to go against these drag queens that are reading books to the children? I said, no, I'm not. But what I am going to do is come with my Bible, and I am going to come and talk to the kids and let them know that change is also possible. You know, we want to lock arms with them, but what we will not stand for is people telling us how to raise our kids or giving them the option. I'm not even talking about the parents volunteering, because my parents didn't volunteer me for nothing. It was me. It wasn't a gay to straight thing. It was a lots to save thing. So I need to stop before I start preaching. But thank you for giving me this opportunity. This place is beautiful. I also heard someone talk about Post Nightclub, and like I said, it was a tragic event, and we definitely don't want to use that as, you know what I mean, a platform of pity, if not to join together and to build the church community and give them gay awareness. And also that if that really hits you so hard, to come and say hi to us. We don't bite. We love you guys.
Hello guys, my name is Angel Colon. Thank you for the opportunity today. Like Louis as well, I was not abused, nothing physical. Had the same-sex attraction. I did not want it ever since I was a child, youth, and I wish I was offered an opportunity to talk to someone about it. I didn't get that opportunity, and going forward, I had desire to want change in my life, but I never had that option. I took action on that after Pulse Nightclub happened to me. And after that, now we have Fearless Identity, and we speak to a lot of youth, a lot of kids, and like Louis said, a lot of them come up to us wanting to change. And we speak to them, we give them advice, and we don't force anything upon them. If they want the change, go get the change. If you want to stay the same, if you want to be gay, that's okay. We still love you. We have nothing against you. We just want that option to give kids and youth that option to change if they want to take it. And going back to Pulse, I say it's all respect and love. I still have friends that are in the gay lifestyle. I'm still very, very close to the other survivors. It's a bond of brothers and sisters, something that we all went through. And we speak to each other, and they know what I'm doing, and they respect it because I share my love with them. I don't throw it down their throat. I tell them what I do, but I still tell them that I love them, that I don't hate them, that it's not homophobia. It's just a choice that I've decided for me, and I think a choice that we should give our kids and our youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call up Stephanie Curry, Jonathan Alexander, and Andrew Beckley. So I would just like to ask if we have a lot of people left that are still interested in testifying, and we have to go back to the other legislation as well. So if you could maybe slow it down a little bit and leave your testimony, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, so the two individuals besides me have both flown in from other parts of the country, the local attorneys who are monitoring these types of legislation and problems that come from families across the country. So I'd like to have them testify. I'll be brief as well.
Okay. And certainly feel free to hand in legislation, your testimony.
I will do that. So I'll limit my testimony just to addressing a couple of items briefly that were brought up that I think need some clarification. The first is the attorney my name is Angel Beckley, I'm an attorney with Massachusetts Family Institute. The attorney from GLAD talked about how this is a narrowly tailored bill that only bans therapy that seeks to change sexual orientation or gender identity. But if you look at, again, Senate Bill 70, the wording is the same in House Bill 140, line 20 of Senate Bill 70 says, gender identity and sexual orientation, including but not limited to efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions. So that's not narrowly tailored. That means that as someone who here who have testified today, if they wanted to, if their vision, if their desire was to grow up and have a family, to get married, to have children, and for their children to have a mother and a father, which I think is an honorable vision for anyone to have. But if they suffered from same-sex desire that they did not want, it would prohibit them from fulfilling their family desire. They would not be able to seek help even to change their behaviors, or in the case of gender identity expressions. No one is arguing that someone can necessarily change the sexual desires that a person has with therapy. But we're all accountable for the behavior. And if someone is seeking counseling for help in changing unwanted behaviors, It's unconscionable we would try and ban that. So I'll yield the rest of my time to.
I'm Stephanie Curry, and I am with Family Policy Alliance. We actually represent tens of thousands of Massachusetts citizens here who are adamantly opposed to HB 140. It is unconstitutional content-based regulation on free speech, and I won't belabor the point because I believe my colleagues will address it in detail, but we have not seen these kinds of civil and criminal penalties attached to basic talk therapy, giving advice. And the reason why that hasn't been done is because it is unconstitutional. NIFLA v. Becerra did in fact say that this type of legislation ignores the constitutional rights of individuals to speak freely and punishes them if they do. This bill forces its one-size-fits-all viewpoint on youth and therapy providers alike, claiming change in one direction works for every youth at all times, at any age, and that is simply not true. The youth of Massachusetts have the right to choose who they want to be and who they don't want to be, and to discuss that choice with a professional. Please protect the right of all of our youth to choose the future they want and vote no on HB 140. Second, unconstitutional prohibitions on advertising is another reason we are adamantly opposed to this bill. The Supreme Court declared, as my colleague said, that professional speech can be limited narrowly in regards to factual and non-controversial information. Factually, there are quite a few reputable longitudinal studies, the gold standard, that find therapy open to change, not aversive, not coercive, basic talk therapy has measurable, helpful, and beneficial results. Nicolosi, Beard and Potts, 2000, Spitzer, 2003, Carton and Wade, 2010, Jones and Yarhouse, 2007, Santero, Whitehead, Ballesteros, 2018. There was another just released a few weeks ago. Democratic free governments like that of Massachusetts do not ban speech and take children away from their parents for speaking what has been factually true for many. Vote for free speech. Vote no on HB 140. In conclusion, HB 140, NIFLA warrants it is treading into perilously unconstitutional waters non-democratic governments drown in to increase state power and suppress minorities. The minority here is not the LGBT-identified minority, but those who represent the changed, former LGBT individuals. Their voices are silenced. Democracy does not compel therapy providers to untruthfully say there's change in only one direction. Democracy does not censor truth, that gender is a fact of biology, not bigotry. The truth, many studies show life-transforming change and freedom from unwanted sexual attraction and gender dysphoria. Vote for democracy and allow ideas to flow freely, even those that are controversial, especially those that are controversial. Allow Americans to hear their truth and decide their own futures. Please vote no on HB 140. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Alexander, and I'm the Director of Public Policy for Liberty Counsel. Our organization represents many of the clients and counselors whose practice seems to be at the crosshairs of this legislation. This bill ultimately leaves a hurting person without someone to hear them, and it leaves them without someone to talk to. Laws banning certain professional speech have recently been chastised by the Supreme Court, condemning the same overreach, such as this bill here in Massachusetts is attempting to do. And it's plain why this bill violates every First Amendment constitutional test. This bill is not content neutral. It discriminates against specific viewpoints. It's overbroad. It's vague, not clearly defined. And it places a prior restraint on speech. All these, in essence, are just different ways of saying that it's a government attempting to police a counseling session, deciding that it knows best on what should be said or shared there. However, talk therapy allows a client and a counselor to have conversations which are directed by the client, concerning what the conflicted client's goals are. For instance, it allows a teenager to decide what they want to talk about, what they choose to remain silent about, in order to reach their goals. Some clients may have a viewpoint where they suffer between a conflict between their lifestyle and their beliefs, and they may volunteer that information to a counselor who allows them to work through that unwanted same-sex attraction. But this bill seeks to shut down that space where clients, however they may come to discuss their stressors, their depression, substance abuse, or any other thing that have come as a result of their unwanted same-sex attractions. It's through these talk therapy sessions that these clients are able to find a resolution where there once was trauma. I think of my friend Walt Howard, who testified before you last year. He's a counselor in this space. He was born male, and he says he began his transgender journey when he was just 4 years old. He underwent gender transition in his early 40s and lived as a woman for 8 years. He says he regrets that change, but that he needed someone to sit down with him, to talk to him, to hear him, to help him through his unwanted orientation. Walt says that now hundreds of people come to him for his advice on their unwanted sexual attractions. But this bill seeks to silence people like Walt, and it will not give an outlet for persons who are struggling in the very same way that he struggled. I know members of this committee say that they're ready to stand to help anyone in this Commonwealth to achieve their best experiences here in this Commonwealth. But this bill does the exact opposite. It unreasonably forces government between the client and the therapist. It violates constitutionally protected free speech. Ultimately, it leaves a hurting person without someone to hear them. Most importantly, it leaves a person who's hurting without a therapist to talk to. For these reasons, I urge that you reject Senate Bill 7 and House Bill 140.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions?
Sure. Thank you all for coming. As you may know, so the First Amendment part of this debate is what interests me a great deal. My colleagues have done a great job at attesting to the other aspects of this. But so I guess my first question is to Attorney Curry. You said this is a content-based regulation. Is that quoting the NIFLA decision, or is that your own opinion?
As far as this regulation is concerned, I believe it is in fact quoting the NIFLA opinion.
Okay, so I have the NIFLA opinion here. I've read it. I didn't see that in there.
It cites the pickup case, which
The pickup
was...
case, yes. Great, the pickup case is the case in California in the Ninth Circuit where the court upheld a conversion therapy ban, correct?
That's correct. It seems to me that in this decision, the Supreme Court is calling out that decision and saying that professional speech is not a category of speech they recognize. And throughout the opinion, the Supreme Court seems to criticize that decision and other decisions like it.
So I think I would agree in a limited sense, and I think even Attorney Klein mentioned this, that professional speech, that Justice Thomas did talk about professional speech in terms of just professional speech that was called out, as you say, by Justice Thomas. However, the pickup decision was based on professional conduct, incidental speech. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Would you also agree that the Supreme Court had a chance to take up that case and declined to take it up?
At the time, yes, I do agree, but
Okay.
it's the
Twice?
well, the landscape of speech has changed since then. As far as what the Supreme Court has been saying, they have not taken up the case, but if they did, we just have serious concerns to violate.
But they had the opportunity to take up the case and they passed on it.
That's correct.
And so you're basing the entire sort of pivot here is because of the NIFLA case? You're thinking, is that changing the landscape? Because the landscape was pretty clear before that. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, the landscape is clear that the government does not have the right to restrict speech in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, but every time this has come up, there's the King decision in Third Circuit, pickup case. Every time it's come up, the courts have ruled that it is a fair regulation of professional conduct under the police powers of government licensing.
The Ninth Circuit has. That's
And
true.
every
I don't
other
think the Supreme
circuit.
Court- I'm not certain that the Supreme Court would make
Okay.
that same decision based upon their criticism, very specific criticism of the decision and the reasoning in the pickup case.
I understand. I'm sorry, I'm maybe sounding argumentative here, but when you made that claim, it kind of set me off because I think that's your opinion and you're representing that as the court's opinion, which I don't believe is the case.
Well, if I may, this legislation defines sexual orientation to include homosexuality, heterosexuality, and there's another word in there, gender identity. But for example, this legislation doesn't apply to all sexual orientations. That right
This
there is a
law-
content-based distinction.
This bill is very similar to the law in California, would you agree? That has been upheld.
Yes, I agree with
Okay,
that,
thank you.
yes.
To place things in context and perspective, I'm actually from Liberty Counsel, the firm that represented David Pickett.
Yes,
Ninth Circuit
I've
case.
seen that, yes.
And we've returned and asked for a motion to recommit.
Right,
To change
I
the
had that too,
date.
February 11th, yes.
Right, both, February 11th is a very recent date, and it does represent, using the language that Thomas has provided in the Milford case, that it does open a new door to revisiting these decisions. Decisions based on content-based, content-based and viewpoint discrimination. So the door is wide open. Currently, we are litigating intent as we speak today, where a magistrate has given us favorable rulings to continue
You're talking about in Florida?
litigation. Absolutely.
Okay, and then the next week in Florida, another judge upheld the ban.
Which
Correct.
continues to demonstrate, as Attorney Curry was mentioning, the changing jurisprudence in the nation when it comes to this specific speech. One thing that does remain clear is that government has no place between a client and their therapist. It's not a place for government to insert themselves. But the Supreme Court and other courts across the nation are well within their rights to change legal jurisprudence. We've seen that. Plessy v. Ferguson changed legal jurisprudence, Brown versus Board of Education. There are times when a court comes out with a decision, specifically language addressing a certain area of the law, that reopens an issue. And we're seeing that in the Ninth Circuit. We're seeing that also in the King case in New Jersey.
I'm just going to let that lie.
Excuse me. I do have one quick follow-up on this point around police powers. Can you describe police powers? Because it seems to me that what this bill in particular is doing is asserting the rights of the state around police powers to ensure that services that are provided are not causing undue harm to minors in our state. So I'd love for you to explain police powers and how you see the balance of the tension between what you're sort of focused on around free speech, which this bill is not really around. It's really a police power.
I guess I'd be happy to answer that. So again, to specifically quote Justice Thomas in the NIFLA decision, addressing what he says the flawed logic of the pickup decision in the Ninth Circuit and the King decision out of New Jersey. Says speech is not unprotected merely because it is uttered by professionals. Doctors help patients make deeply personal decisions, and their candor is crucial. When the government polices the content of professional speech, it can fail to, quote, preserve an uninhibited marketplace of ideas in which truth will ultimately prevail. So, we believe there is ample hope that the Supreme Court, if this law is unfortunately passed, in those federal court decisions and be overturned because it is overbroad and it impinges on the rights of families and therapists and clients to get the counseling they choose. And I just want to add, because this hasn't been mentioned yet, Senate Bill 70 is by far the most aggressive form of this legislation we've seen to date in our country. It labels talk therapy statutorily as child abuse and would require all mandatory child welfare reporters to notify the state of any mental health professional who uses this type of therapy, including those therapists who have a simple conversation about same-sex attraction or gender identity with their client. Parents and therapists simply attempting, for example, to help gender-confused children avoid hormone injections and feel comfortable in their own skin would become the subject of a Department of Children and Families child abuse investigation, which could result in the loss of custody because it adds sexual orientation change efforts to the list of statutory child abuse categories under Section 51A, which is where you get the 51A reports, which is how Justina Pelletier, according to her, was stolen from her family for over a year because of a dispute over medical treatment. And I can't imagine that this body would want to repeat that tragedy on any number of youth who are simply trying to find their truth for how they live out their lives.
Just a quick.
Really fast, I promise. Massachusetts Family Institute is associated with Focus on the Family, correct?
Focus on the Family, Alliance Defending Freedom, and the Family Resource Council. That's
And
right.
Focus on the Family and Massachusetts Family Institute oppose same-sex marriage
We do.
and oppose same-sex adoption.
We believe every child deserves a mother and a father, and that marriage is between one man and one woman.
So over the course of the last several hours, we have heard from opponents to the ban that you want kids and adults to be able to make these decisions and that you would support them in their right to make that decision. But I think, is it not important for us to know that the opponents of the ban, yourselves, oppose the option of marriage for LGBTQ individuals and oppose adoption for these same individuals.
Well, what we're seeing with the current status of the law on those issues is the new victims being people who are trying to live out their lives, like the cake baker in Colorado, who almost lost his business because he was trying to live out his conscience. And I can't imagine you would want someone to violate their conscience on these issues, would you?
Okay, thank you for your testimony, and we are moving on. Running out of time. I'd like to call, so we have a number of people who are still opponents to the legislation. If you want to come up and give us just a 1-minute description of what you're interested in. Okay, why don't you all come up together, those of you. And I'm going to give you each just 1 minute, because we just don't have a lot of time.
Thank you.
We have another bill to discuss as well.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairs, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. My name is Diana Dimitri Curtin, and I am here to oppose Bill H-140. I am a licensed independent clinical social worker here in Massachusetts. I received my master's in social work from Boston College in '97 and was subsequently independently licensed. I have held positions in inpatient psychiatric facilities, partial hospitalization programs, and have been a clinician in various outpatient settings serving adolescent and adult populations. According to the NASW Code of Ethics, as a social worker, I must, quote, treat each person in a caring and respectful fashion, mindful of individual differences and cultural and ethnic diversity. Social workers must promote a client's socially responsible self-determination. Those are the words that I'd like to focus on, self-determination. And engage people as partners in the helping process, end quote. I am proud to say that I have done my best to adhere to these principles in each and every client interaction I've had. I'm not going to read the rest of this that I prepared.
Yes,
I would love to do that. But I guess I just sit here confused because my adult life has been dedicated to helping people. And I am pro-human being. I am not anti-anything. But this idea of conversion or coercive therapy, in my 20 years of being in this state, I have never known anyone to do these things to children. And I agree with you that if there is child abuse going on, my gosh, I am the first one to say, throw these people in jail and throw away the key. I'm not advocating for child abuse, and I don't think that there's anybody in this room that is pro-child abuse. So we hear people stand up here passionately against child abuse. Well, yeah, I'm against child abuse too. I just don't want somebody telling me what I can say and handcuffing my free speech in the setting of my office. I want to meet with a client and I want to follow the path of where they want to go. So as a clinician and a mother, I oppose this bill. I think it's terrifying. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is John Cho. My wife and I are residents of Hyde Park, just ordinary citizens. I greatly appreciate all the different stories that were shared today and all the brave people on both sides that shared their personal stories of trauma and hurt, and I'm deeply grieved by those stories. I think one thing that because my opinion as an ordinary citizen is, given our political climate today in America, I think it's very important that we consider opposition's points of view despite party lines and cultural assumptions. And so, one thing that I really appreciate by the more progressive side is that they really emphasize listening to everyone's stories. And what I ask is that we all here today also recognize that there are stories of people that have changed or have said to experience change in their sexual orientation and gender identity, and they found that to be healing to them, and I do not think we can reject their stories. And the one last thing I'll say is that my wife and I are DCF foster parents, and we deal with youth that have experienced abuse and trauma in so many just heinous and grievous ways. And I do not think that change efforts necessarily constitute examples of abuse in line with human trafficking and exploitation and sexual and physical abuse. And so Bill S-70, especially in Section 2, that part, just as an ordinary citizen, that does not make sense to me at all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Tim, and I testified here 2 years ago, and it's on YouTube if anybody wanted to see that. But I wanted to read Thomas Jefferson quote: "If you can't protect the rights of conscience as an inalienable right, then everything below that the government is going to regulate as well." And I look at this as a regulation of people's conscience, and an overreach of parental rights, of training up the child in the way they should go, which is a verse from the Bible, which would infringe on the First Amendment right. The parents are trying to do the best, and they have the kids' best interest at heart. If they seek out counseling, it's a counsel of their choice. They should do due diligence to make sure what's going on in that counseling session isn't harmful, like some of the people that I heard last time I was here went through horrific things. That's terrible. Nobody wants to see that happen. But I went through years of pain through my adolescence after being molested as a young kid. And I sought peace through drugs and alcohol. And there's kids out there that need to be able to have someone to talk to, because the suicide rates are high. And it's not because they told somebody about it. I heard somebody say earlier, when they tell your parents and they get rejection, that's what puts them into despair and depression. That's not. You're dealing with your own conscience. You're dealing with self-hatred. You're dealing with a lot of issues that need to be talked out with a professional. And I wish I had that when I was a kid. And you shouldn't deny people that right. It's a right. And it's an overreaching government regulating conscience.
Thank you. Could you just state your name?
My name is Tim Mead, Saugus, Mass.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And I appreciate you all keeping it short, so thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm Brenda Kate Simons. I live in Brockton, and I handed out my printed testimony. At barely 15, I found myself sexually attracted to my female best friend. It was 1990. I always like to say 7 years before Ellen DeGeneres came out. As we entered into a physical relationship, I read in a health book that if you are attracted to someone of the same sex, and especially if you act on it, then you are gay. I remember thinking, there it is, I am a homosexual. I was raised in a liberal home, not a religious home at all. My parents were hippies. They were actually at Woodstock. No one ever told me that it was wrong to be gay. I was supported at home, and by college I found support there. I was told the only way to have happiness was to accept myself as a gay person. I had done that, so why did I feel so uneasy? After almost a decade of being gay identified, I went to counseling to address my whole person, and I'm skipping huge chunks here, but my counselor wasn't trying to change my sexual orientation, but she was willing to discuss with me whatever issues and questions I brought to each session. That would still be allowed if this counseling ban was passed. And I just want to read the very end, if that's okay. I don't sit before you as a straight person. I am still same-sex attracted, though I am married to a man. I am here today because I am looking back 28 years on my 15-year-old self and wondering how my life might have been different if I were offered a different answer, perhaps one that wasn't so black and white. Did I really have to act on my same-sex attraction in order to be happy? Did I really have to act on feelings just because I had them? Or could I have benefited from someone sitting with me with a willingness to listen to my story and walk with me through the healing process, wherever that might lead? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Derrick. I'm a Massachusetts resident. I live in Leicester. I'm the pastor of Greenville Baptist Church. In my responsibilities as a minister, I do counsel with families. I do counsel with teenagers. I am not a licensed counselor. I'm a pastor, and I give them pastoral care. But there are times in which it seems necessary and appropriate for me to refer them to a professional counselor. I fear that Senate Bill 70 would prevent me from recommending a counselor who could help a family or help a young person navigate these difficult life situations from their shared Christian and biblical perspective. Talk therapy with a licensed counselor that seeks to help young people and parents make decisions in keeping with their faith. As my reading of this bill, it would be banned. As a Christian minister who has a passion and responsibility to aid my congregation, it's deeply troubling to me that much needed help for people from a faith perspective would not be available or legal. A faith perspective, I would add, that is not new or radical or obscure, but historical, proven, and minded of. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Eric Schweitzer, and I've been a licensed psychologist here in Massachusetts since 1988. For the past 3 years, I have directed a network of church-affiliated outpatient counseling centers in southeastern Mass, central Mass, Cape Cod, and Rhode Island, all staffed by licensed therapists. Most of our clients come to us because they seek services in line with the Christian faith that we share with them, although we are happy to receive anyone who comes and work with them as they may desire. Over the years, we've had many clients, both over and under the age of 18, who wrestle with their gender identity, sexual orientation, which has been referred to today already as unwanted desires. And we do not, in any way, shape, or form, provide or attempt to provide what's been called conversion therapy. Defined as conversion therapy today, we would be very much against that, as everyone here in this room seems to be, rightly so. We do, however, attempt to help people understand the nature of their struggle and what we believe to be larger psychological, spiritual issues that underlie that struggle, particularly with children, helping them understand a little more clearly what their motives and the dynamics might be that lead them in the direction that they believe they're headed at this time, at a particular time. We don't, again, skipping around, I want to make the point, as the American Psychological Psychiatric Associations have been referenced earlier today, that both those societies have made statements in recent years which clearly admit that there are too many variables involved in these cases to definitively assert that biology, neurology, or genetics are the only causative factors. Therefore, we think that children should not be encouraged to freely determine, completely on their own, what form of gender expression they desire to embrace. That whole notion is based on a fictitious assumption that they are biologically determined to be a certain way.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to stop, but if you would hand in your testimony, we'd be happy to have that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think there's only, so I have 2 more people, and I think that will be the end of the conversion therapy thing. So I think we will work with everyone. So if I could have Jeremy Como and Aaron Goldman. Is Aaron still here?
Chairperson Khan, Chairperson Chang Diaz, and members of the Joint Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak on this important legislation. My name is Jeremy Camo, and I'm the co-chair of the Bay State Stonewall Democrats, the Commonwealth's LGBTQ Democrats. Along with my co-chair, Claire Naughton, and other members who are here today with us, we advocate on behalf of the LGBTQ community on issues such as the one before you today. We believe many of you realize the importance of your vote that you will take here in committee and again on the floor of your respective chamber. By voting to ban this abusive and dangerous practice, as 15 states and DC already do, you are protecting the LGBTQ youth of Massachusetts from dangerous effects such as depression, drug use, homelessness, and yes, even suicide. The LGBTQ plus youth of the Commonwealth must know, without a glimmer of doubt, that they are exactly who they are supposed to be, and that they do not need therapy to change who they are. They only need love. In the last session, a handful of your colleagues voted against a ban, and we want to offer this caution to those considering the same vote. If you vote to retain this barbaric practice, you will send a message to LGBTQ youth in your district and across the Commonwealth. The message you would send is that their representative in the General Court will not stand up and fight to protect them from physical and mental abuse. I urge you to stand with the LGBTQ community and the youth who already struggle to find their place in the world. I urge you to vote yes to end the abusive practice for conversion therapy for minors. Voting yes is an act of love.
Thank you very much for your testimony. So, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, I am going to close that part of the hearing. Oh, can you move
Less than 1 minute?
Sorry?
Less than 1 minute?
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Rebecca Bowards, the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers, the Massachusetts chapter. And as NASW was referenced in this hearing, and we do have prepared written testimony, and I know we're on a very tight timeline, this is one of our priority bills this session, the bill to ban conversion therapy. NASW would not stand in support of this legislation if we thought for any reason this would prohibit therapists from helping their clients and from helping small children or any children work through problems or issues that they have. What this bill does is it bans a coercive practice of trying to force people into expressing a certain way, which they may not feel. And it's problematic when we have therapists who are practicing this way. It's called reparative therapy, and we're opposed to it. Our national organization is opposed to it. The Psychological Association is opposed to it. Most major medical psychological associations are opposed to this practice. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that we're also here to testify on lifting the cap on kids, which I know is coming up next. And we handed in our testimony. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
Chair, can I just ask a quick question? If this, the part I struggle with this 140 is talk therapy aspect of it. Not because of anything, just because of I think sometimes we are losing sight of the abusive aspects of it, which I'm supporting either one. I have a co-sponsored bill on this also. So the part that struggles with, if talk therapy was exempt from this bill, would more organizations like yourself be supporting it? Just from a professional standpoint, I'm asking, because I'm trying to educate myself. I don't pretend to be a lawyer, and nor will I ever. So I don't want to get into the First Amendment piece of it. I just want to talk about it as a human being, as a person.
Yeah, I guess I would say as a human being, the purpose of this ban is to make sure that we are not harming youth, that we're not harming minors in a therapeutic environment, that we don't have therapists who are licensed going into sessions and telling kids that they're not gay and forcing them in a direction that would be harmful to them. We want people to have the opportunity to express how they're feeling, to walk through all of the variety of feelings. There's nothing in this bill that bans that sort of discussion or discourse. And I heard that come up, and it's frustrating to hear that, because we would never support a bill that would ban that sort of talking or that sort of discourse or that sort of walking through all the stages of people's emotions and their experience. I don't know if that directly answers your question, but from our standpoint, NASW is the largest professional association of social workers in the world and would not come out in support of this position or this ban if it would in any way limit that ability to have that talk therapy.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close this portion of the hearing and move on to House 104 and Senate 37. So thank you all for coming and speaking on behalf of Bill 140.
I didn't mean to. Sorry. Happy
I said we won't.
It does and Judy, and Rebecca Derwitz, and Aaron O'Leary. So thank you for being patient.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we will try to be as brief as possible. I'm Naomi Meyer with Greater Boston Legal Services, and I'm thrilled to be here on behalf of not only our GBLS clients, but also the campaign to lift the cap on kids, which currently has 124 supporting organizations, all seeking to repeal the welfare family cap and supporting these bills. Many of our members are here in the room, and you'll hear from others. So I will just very briefly reiterate what I think you heard earlier from Rep. Decker about just getting us all on the same page about what the family cap is. I know you've heard it before. But this is a piece of legislation, or this was the family cap rule. It was a rule that treats a child as if it does not exist for purposes of public assistance. And so if that child is born after the family already received assistance, it doesn't get another $100 a month that would otherwise be appropriate for an additional family member, and it doesn't get the clothing allowance, which is currently $350 a year. We look at these families every day at PDLS, and we see the impact and how harsh it is. And to let folks, other folks speak to that, I want to turn it over to the other members of our panel, starting with Judy Frey, who is gracious enough to come and share her story as a mom actually affected by the cap.
Would you just spell your last name?
F-R-E-Y. Good afternoon. My name is Judith Frey. I'm here speaking in hopes to get a positive outcome on the Lift the Cap bill. Being a recipient, I can tell you guys firsthand that the bill is flawed. It's detrimental and it's harmful for vulnerable families like myself. Applying for assistance isn't really goals. It's not something that we wake up and say, oh, I'm gonna go and get assistance. It's kind of like the last resort when you're in a predicament that you have no other avenues to turn to. And most of us see applying for assistance as very dehumanizing, and it's a lot of hurdles that you have to jump over just to actually qualify and get the benefits, so it's really the last resort. I applied for cash assistance recently, and after jumping through the hurdles and going through the prerequisites of what it was that I needed to do to qualify, I was given the assistance, but I was handed a sheet from my caseworker with my name, my children's name, and next to my youngest it said cap baby. And it said cap. And I was like confused on what that meant because my oldest son had like the amount next to his name. And once my caseworker explained it to me, I was kind of infuriated and frustrated that on paper it looks really good. He's a cap baby, so to the system, it saves the Commonwealth a little bit of money short term, but long term, the effects and the burden is on the families. And that's a dollar sign that can't be put back. And so when I go home, I can't tell my son that his needs aren't going to be met, and I'm not going to provide his necessities because he's a cat baby. And I can't tell my oldest that the money that I am getting that I wish I could spend on something that could benefit him, such as like extra activities, because he has some trauma from being homeless. That money can't go to that because I have to split up the amount that's already so little into so many different areas. With that being said, I just hope that this is reconsidered because I already feel like the amount is too little, and for us to be forced to split it up even more for a system that isn't really working just validates our feelings when we feel like it's a dehumanizing situation, because we already feel like we're numbers to the system, and when you put the word cat baby next to someone's child, it just validates that frustration.
Thank you very much for your testimony and sharing your story.
Chairwoman Khan, Chairman Chang Diaz, and members of the committee,
Thank you very much for listening to our testimony today. My name is Beth Babcock. I am the head of Economic Mobility Pathways, and I'm here hoping that you'll give a favorable report to this CAP. MPATH is a Boston-based global nonprofit organization that is the national leader in developing brain science-based approaches to coaching families, helping them move out of poverty. We provide emergency shelter and transitional housing as well as economic mobility mentoring services to about 1,400 people in the greater Boston area, and our partner organizations in 30 states and 5 other countries provide services to 2 million. It's with their experience in mind and our own experience that I have to tell you that the importance of this cap being lifted cannot be overstated. As you've heard from Judy and from others, lifting the cap would result in approximately $100 more a month in child assistance to families on TAFDC. The research on child development is really unequivocal, and you would think that $100 a month doesn't make much of a difference, but actually $100 a month translates into many important aspects of child development and their outcomes, including about a 6% difference in reading and numeracy scores and progress in school for children who have been either deprived or provided, positive or negative, with that small amount of additional income. It can alleviate, we know, the situational stresses that you just heard Judy articulate so very clearly on families that actually cause them to have their own decision-making skills and compromised so that their ability to help themselves go to school, work, get ahead, help their families is challenged. And so what we hope that you're going to do is take this evidence at its value. We can provide you with supporting documents and research if you want it. And repeal this failed policy in order to give our families the supports that they need for their children to flourish, and for us as a Commonwealth not to suffer as a result of it.
Thank you very much. Okay,
my name is Erin Berry from the minority neighborhoods, and
so before you start, I apologize. So we're trying to limit it now to like 1 minute so we can get through everybody, so I apologize. Okay, thank you.
But as you can tell by my gray hair, my cat baby is not young. She is 22 now. And this is how long this problem has gone on. $100 would have made the difference between an electric bill, and I wouldn't have to stay awake wondering whether I paid rent or gas or electric. It would have made the difference between diapers. I use cloth diapers because I got $486 a month. My rent was $400, and I had to pay everything out of that money. And so this makes a world of difference. And thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming to testify and sharing your work.
Again, Rebecca Gort from the National Association of Social Workers, and this bill has been on our priority list this session and last session, and really over all of time. Actually, Chair Khan, you and I have talked about that vote that you took, and that you came back to your seat and saw a note from the social workers saying thank you. Thank you for your vote in opposition to this bill. So right now we have a situation in Massachusetts where we have 8,700 of the poorest kids in the entire state who are going without in the richest, one of the richest states in the nation. I recently saw a report, or maybe it was last year, that compared Massachusetts to other wealthy nations, actually. And if you do that comparison, you find that Massachusetts is ranked 4th richest, really, in the world. Behind countries like Luxembourg and Sweden and others, there's only 3 more that are wealthy. We're a very wealthy state, and we should not have children who are going without in such a dramatic and traumatic way. Social workers every single day work to lift up our state's poorest kids, people who have disabilities, people who are vulnerable. And we say, please, do what you did last session. Thank you so much for what you did last session in terms of lifting this cap on kids. Do it again. We are here with you. We support you in doing this. We want to help you get this over the finish line this year, and we'll do whatever it takes to stand behind you for doing that. We need justice for these kids, and we need justice now. The other thing I would just say, and I know I'm out of time, is I often walk by the people running the Salvation Army bill, and I'm in support of the Salvation Army, and I'm in support of the bill, but we talk a lot about charity. We do not talk enough about justice. And this bill advances justice in our Commonwealth by lifting outdated, terrible policy